In my experience, there's two reasons why people want to be a performer. They either want to satisfy them, a need within themselves and to make other people happy, or they're doing it because they want all the gratification that comes with it, like, money, girls, whatever it might be, social status. And if you're doing it for the right reasons, and with comedy for me, it was always about, I love laughing and I love it when the people around me are laughing. That's why I really got into it. But it was that genuine love of sketch comedy from The Goon Show and Monty Python and so forth that really made me go, I'd love to do that. And I grew up wishing I could have been in Monty Python.
Hey legends, Damien here, the creator and founder of Apex Unleashed. Really looking forward to you today, to seeing today's episode, and hopefully for you, it's the gateway for you finding out a little bit about yourself and how you can help you move forward with your goals, hopes and dreams.
G'day everybody, it's Damien Piotr here from Apex Unleashed. I have the man, the myth, the legend, JNewtz. How are you, buddy?
I'm good. Yourself, man?
Look, it's really interesting. We know this time of year is a year for, I suppose, reflection and people to sort of, as a comedian yourself, a time to be a bit positive. And the world needs comedy, right?
You know what? The world has always needed comedy. But I think that the past couple of years especially has taught us that the world needs comedy more than ever, because I know a lot of people personally who have taken things not just seriously, but they've let it embody themselves far too much, where they're literally almost shells of who they used to be a few years ago. You can see in their eyes the fear or the fact that they're just scared people, and they've forgotten how to just laugh, disassociate yourself from all the bullshit around you and just laugh. So we need comedy right now more than anything, really. I'm
a massive fan of comedy and the Netflix specials, and before Netflix and all those shows, Saturday Night Live. Hey, It's Saturday, when I was a kid, was probably the first comedy show I remember 20 plus years ago. And now comedy's turned into a way to influence. Like 2021 is all about comedy, about Dave Chappelle trying to be cancelled for being funny, about a stereotype and a type of people that have been referenced to, where he's pro a lot of the people that are sort of being antagonistic with him. And you can say it because you're in the actual industry, is that when did comedy really start trying to influence agendas and people and all these different things? And how did it slip into comedy? Because everyone tried to make a joke that was funny, and now they're trying to cancel people for being funny because it's not their opinion, it's a joke.
I think, look, comedy's been used in advertising for decades and decades and decades. I mean, back in the 60s, for example, there's this wonderful old, I think it's Roundtree's chocolate. They made an ad in the UK with one of the two Ronnies, Ronnie Corbett, the smaller one.
Sure.
And what they did is they tied him to a steam engine and ran him up and down this railway, all part of this chocolate commercial. And of course, he's a comedian, so they've been using comedy for advertising for years. I think it changed to the whole I'm offended thing probably within the last 6 to 8 years. That's where I've really noticed it coming in, where the PC culture was really going crazy. Then you had the I'm entitled crowd. Then you had the gender pay gap crowd, the feminist crowd. And then you've got the gender fluidity and, you must use my pronouns crowd. It's just layer upon layer of just pathetic bullshit. And these days, people are now taking offense on behalf of other people or other cultures who didn't take offense. And that's also filtered down into comedy. I'll give you a very brief example. I did a joke a little while ago about getting a Subway sandwich and how they put so little things on your sandwich when you're paying premium dollar for it. And to associate yourself between the customer and the person serving, a lot of people working at Subway these days happen to be Indian. So you put a bit of an accent on and people go, oh, that's racist. And it's not racist, it's an accent. It's a fucking accent. Like, if I was going, oh, no, like if there's a way to be racist and there's a way to be funny. And it all comes across in the delivery. If your
satire, isn't it?
It is. But if your intention is to insult somebody or to put somebody or a demographic down, then you're sexist, misogynistic, racist, whatever. But if it's about being lighthearted and you can see that a person's got just a joking intention, then there really shouldn't be anyone trying to do it. And cancel culture is just a way of these days trying to shoot people down for no reason. I mean, Chappelle, perfect example. There was no reason for him to go through that saga with the cancel culture. But the best way to deal with cancel culture is to ignore it. Because if you actually start to pay attention and listen and you go, actually, yeah, you're right, I'm sorry, I was in the wrong. What you're basically saying is, I knew what I said was wrong and therefore I apologize. But if you said it to make a joke and there was no, bad thoughts or malicious intent behind it, why are you apologizing for something that was intentioned to be funny?
Yeah, very true.
Cancel culture exists because people fall into the trap of going, oh, I should apologize. But apologize for what? And that's what needs to stop. And it isn't just about comedy, it's about everything in the world. These days you can't even say, bar black sheep because it's defensive.
Schools have changed. There's no such thing as a blackboard now. Yeah. And news cycles run for how long, like 14 days, 12 days, something like that. Things do move rather quickly. Which, speaking of moving quickly, as a performer, you're considered a writer, comedian, actor, director. What are some of the things that, for you that got you into comedy? Because in order to be all these things, you had to start somewhere, right? And the curiosity always for people is, how did you begin and what happened?
Yeah, well, my dad is English, and when I was a young kid, radio show in the 50s called The Goon Show. Three men, grown men, acting and talking horrendously silly. It was all just a radio play, but I got introduced to that by my dad, and we'd always listen to it on ABC radio, all the reruns. And he tried to do some of the voices, and then he bought some tapes and I'd listen to. And after a while, I just started to mimic the voices and tried to do whatever I could. So my love of comedy really started with being introduced to the Goons and trying to actually, imitate the voices and then recite some of the sketches and so forth. And then that got me into acting. And then as I got older, I really discovered, Monty Python, Fawlty Towers, Mr. Bean, Are You Being Served, and what we now classify as, classic comedy, Blackadder and everything else. And that to me was, I loved the fact that it was just grown people being silly. Laughter always made things incredible. And it was just something that was, it was just always on my mind that, I love the feeling of laughter. And whenever I used to do voices or anything like that, I'd make other people laugh. And it's a really good feeling to be able to make somebody laugh. In my experience, there's two reasons why people want to be a performer. They either want to satisfy them, a need within themselves and to make other people happy, or they're doing it because they want all the gratification that comes with it, like, money, girls, whatever it might be, social status. And if you're doing it for the right reasons, and with comedy for me, it was always about, I love laughing and I love it when the people around me are laughing. That's why I really got into it. But it was that genuine love of sketch comedy from The Goon Show and Monty Python and so forth that really made me go, I'd love to do that. And I grew up wishing I could have been in Monty Python. That's where it all started. Yeah,
I've got a family member that bangs on about Monty Python. I've never watched it. I tell a lie, I've watched scenes and they're like, it's really funny, but because you've only seen the scene, you don't get the context of it, right? Which leads me to a very good thing about comedy, is that how often do people just give you that little snippet that is obviously controversial, but doesn't show the punchline, the joke, all the other things. Now, not just relative to comedy, but life. What style of comedy do you reference to and do you enjoy? Because that style of comedy where you just get that little trigger point and then try and make it, I suppose, in the words we're looking in, to be a little bit creative. What is it for you? Because you're not trying to be a controversial character, you're trying to be yourself.
Well, look, I always say that comedy and good comedy should be provoking. It should provoke you to question things, not provoke you to go, oh, I've hurt my feelings or anything, but you should start to sort of just question a few things about life. Like, for example, I made a joke a few years ago when they passed the gay marriage law in Australia. I made a joke about, maybe they didn't realize how good they had it in the past because, it's just so uncomplicated because if two guys get together, they're married, after a while they get divorced, right? Well, you take half, that was yours, that was mine, see you later. But these days, now that women can get married, how do they both get, full custody of the kids and 60% of the house? So and
close to home, mate, but continue.
And I've got friends in my life who are either gay, lesbian. I've got a trans member of my family.
Yeah.
But that joke was crafted to, number one, celebrate the fact that the LGBT community finally had the privilege legally of getting married, which is a joke in itself. Because how can you how could you oppress people for loving somebody, no matter what their gender?
Why we need to have a referendum and to vote for it is beyond me, but another story for another day.
Yeah, exactly. But the other part of that joke was, well, let's laugh about how, maybe we didn't think about this part of it, because in a typical male-female relationship, divorce is a real thing, and someone always leaves with more and someone always leaves with less. And it's like, well, that has to also come into if you want the marriage rights, you got to get the other rights to go with it. And I think that good comedy should be provoking. So I like comedy that makes you question things, but I also like dark comedy. So
it needs to be edgy. I laugh at edgy shit.
Yeah. Like, I think my comedy idols for that reason are Jimmy Carr, Ricky Gervais, and also people like Billy Connolly, because he could just look at anything in life, whether it was a nonsensical thing or something that was in a world very sensible, and just tear it apart. But he'd do it in this wonderful way where he'd tell you about it, but then he'd rewind and then he'd act it out, and he'd deconstruct the whole thing, and you couldn't help but laugh about it. And I mean, I'm also a photographer. I've been a photographer for years, and this is a perfect example. There are people out there in every hobby in the world. There are people out there who know everything about everything, and they're just those awkward little people that should belong in a pocket society all by themselves. And Billy Connolly makes this great story where he says, I'm taking pictures in Melbourne, and this guy comes up and says, is that a G13? He's like, a what? Your camera, is that a G13? I think it is. I think it is a G13. If you turn it upside down, you realize on the bottom over there it says G13. Oh, so it does. I got the G15 myself. Really? Yeah, the G15 is a bit bigger. It got an extra battery and got a few more features on it. Right? But personally, I'm waiting for the G17 to come out, because the G17 is, excuse me, fuck off. I just loved how he could take something as simple as someone being a camera nerd and take it to that point where you're not really making fun of somebody, but you're laughing about the stupidity of that sort of interaction. And it also makes you as a human go, well, I don't want to be that annoying myself, so I'll kind of tone it down a little bit. Sure.
Oh, look, everyone has a family member or a friend that knows everything about everything. That's why we have messenger groups. Hey, such and such, what's this about? Where you go from there. It's so funny is that it's a fine line, isn't it? So I suppose your, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook channels, you've probably been, I suppose, removed, and some of your content's been cancelled at some point. Mate, I heard a vicious rumor that your TikTok account has been cancelled. How'd you do that?
Yeah, well, the TikTok account, it wasn't the account itself wasn't cancelled, but I put up a video talking about. It was actually one of my parody videos of all things. It was my Victorians parody song, which, if you've seen it on YouTube, it's basically a parody song to the style of Uprising by Muse. And TikTok decided that, we can't show you this, so they took the audio away on the first one. But then, strangely, they left the audio on all the others where the actual lyrics is there. And then I put up another one. I think it was about something to do with the vaccine, just sort of both sides of the equation, and bang, this goes against our community guidelines. It's like, really, TikTok, really? So, you really can't ask too many questions without being censored in some way these days. And YouTube is doing the same sort of thing, but what they're doing is, if they're not pulling content down, they're not recommending your content. Yeah. So, they're like, this person's, talking a bit too much in a scientific way. We won't push that video out there because we don't agree with those views, But in my personal opinion is, if you're making content out there that TikTok want to remove or YouTube want to move, then it's probably the best content to put out there, because it shows that you're being a bit edgy. And if you're being true to yourself and there's people out there that agree with you and want to listen, then great. There's nothing more boring than conforming to what you're told to do by the masses. Yep. There's this great quote. Actually, no, this was the video that got me banned. You've just reminded me. This is the quote. I made this little video for TikTok which said, 2% of people think, 3% of people think they think, and 95% of people would rather die than think. What do you think? And within literally 2 hours, that video was banned from TikTok, taken away. It's like, you do that one more time, you're out of here, son. Because obviously you can't tell the world, think for yourself, because that's not allowed these days.
Yeah. And this is the thing, is that, comedy, like you've referenced straight away, is about it's about walking up to the line and then walking back. But the problem is that the line that, and comedians are dealing with it at the moment, is a joke I told in 2013 has obviously crossed the line, but I told it then. So don't come at me now for something that happened 8 years ago. And Bill Burr's a classic example. Is that he's the pillar of the fight back. Is that he won't ignore it. He'll just be like, he'll explain it. And the problem with common sense is that you talked about 95% of people don't get it. And it's so interesting is that, so the line moves, yeah? And I guess happiness, and like in business, it's constantly evolving and flowing. So for you in comedy moving forward, what do you think is going to make you happy in comedy? Because now the line's moved and you're basically weaving in and out of shots. What's that happiness going to look like to you moving forward?
Well, look, I'll be very honest with you. I never pay attention to the line. Like I said before, I'm very similar to people like Ricky Gervais and Jimmy Carr, where what I like to do is you've got a fair idea where you can feel the line is. When you cross it, you can hear it because people, it's a weird thing. You tell a joke and people go, ooh. So they laugh first and then they realize I shouldn't be laughing at that. And my attitude these days is I just say to people, oh, shut the fuck up or grow up or whatever it might be. And it's similar to Ricky Gervais where he just goes, shut up. Like, look at the Golden Globes, and that's what he does. If he crosses the line, he basically says, deal with it, shut up, and then he moves on. I think, once again, it comes down to intention. It really comes down to intention. I mean, this year in 2021, when we did our comedy festival shows, we made fun of Daniel Andrews with the whole, stage 3 restrictions, stage 4 restrictions, masks and everything. And if you've seen that sketch on my YouTube channel, we did this thing called the Anti-Condomer, which is a sort of spoof on the anti-masker. And then we had, the Premier come out with a bit of a press conference. And if it crosses the line, who cares? Because you're meant to make fun of it. And as I said before, it's about being provoking. There are so many comedians out there, and we get this when we play clubs. One of the venues in Melbourne, Club Voltaire, the guy who runs that, he loves having us there because he says, you guys are not afraid to just say it as it is. You don't self-censor yourselves. And too many comedians self-censor. They go, oh, that's a good joke. And they go, whoa, tone it down. And they're censoring their joke before they've had a chance. The audience has basically given them either the laugh or the, that's not funny. Because what one crowd of people find funny is different from a different crowd. And that's personally, it's exemplified in this way. We do, on average, 6 shows at the comedy festival. And just say we're doing a Friday and a Saturday night. The Friday night, we might have a crowd in there who they laugh their asses off. They get it. They're on that level. Yeah. The next night, get out there, you tell the same jokes, and the crowd are just like, yep. An audience has a personality of its own, and you don't know how the hell it works. It's just that this audience want to laugh, and this audience don't want to laugh. So you are sort of gauged by their reaction. But I personally don't think that there really is a line. You should be able to talk about whatever you want to talk about, joke about whatever you want to joke about, so long as your intention is not to be racist, sexist, or piss people off. You need to come from the intention of, I'm trying to, I can laugh at this. Let's all laugh at this. We're here to come together as people, not be separated as people. And if that's your intention, it doesn't matter what you joke about. Yeah,
it makes sense. Is that, one of the notes here that I'm going to ask you is about, like, I have a lot of conversation with people about how you get started. And one of the allures about, what we get on well with about comedy and being that little bit, that dark side of things, is that when someone starts comedy, what advice would you give them? And it doesn't, to me, what I've learned, it doesn't matter where it's comedy, it's business, it's physical health, it's wellness, it's relationships, it's anything, is that the intention behind how you start is everything. And everyone's so worried about now, how do you start? And they're worried about the line, and what about this? And how do I stand out from the crowd? I said, well, most people don't start with intention. And the best way to start is to actually know within yourself about where that intention's at. So if there was a comedian was starting and they understood what intention meant, where would they go to from there? Because now they've got to find a platform, right? So you've got more platforms than ever, whereas you had a specific probably method and one platform to get to. Whereas now everyone's got a platform. So how do people pick their platforms?
Well, look, these days it's actually very easy. I mean, like, you can literally, get your phone, get a camera, make videos on TikTok, hit record. You're on YouTube, you're on TikTok, you're on Stitch, all that type of stuff. So there are platforms galore these days. The thing with comedy, it's and we've learned this a lot as well. I know I've learned this a lot in the past 2 years. A lot of comedians, because they couldn't get on stage, they were doing Facebook Live or Zoom comedy shows. And it doesn't really work as well because you haven't got that instant reaction from the audience. You haven't got the, like, as I said, an audience has got a personality all of its own. You can see people smiling, but you can't hear them laughing. You know,
the reaction's different. Yeah.
So the reaction is different. The best place for anyone who wants to be a comedian to get started is, number one, start telling some jokes around your friends and your friends of friends at gatherings. Jump onto Facebook and type in comedy rooms, comedy groups, and so forth. There's a whole bunch of comedy scenes all over the world, no matter where you are. Join those groups, and then basically, and they start posting up, hey, we've got a gig. Just say, for example, it's Melbourne. Hey, there's a gig in Brunswick. There's open spots. Who wants one? And you just put your name down. And the other good piece of advice is, once you get there, never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, go to do any form of stand-up comedy without any preparation. You might look at some of the greatest comedians in the world and you think, how do they make this shit up? And the secret is they're not standing there making up. They've made it up 12 months ago. They then spent a long time in the dark, in their rooms, in their cars, editing, perfecting it, you know, performing it, cutting it right down to make it so snappy and edgy. They know it backwards, so that when they get on stage, they tell it as if they're making it up on the spot. And I've seen so many comedians on their very first night get up on stage. They might have one or two jokes already prepared, and then they're just going to be saying like, oh, so what else can I talk about? That guy, where'd you get the tie from, mate? And the audience at that stage just switch right off. So for your very first stand-up gig, prepare for it. If you've got 1 good minute of comedy, practice that 1 minute of comedy, get up there, do that 1 minute and get the hell out of there. Don't drag it on and try to think of things on the spot, because you will bomb, guaranteed, every single time. So look for open mic nights, look for groups. If there's local pubs where you see there's comedy on, you know, have a chat with them about, oh, look, you know, how do I get up? Or if you can't get up because it's a certain comedy night, talk to the comedians and go, hey, where can I get into comedy? Are there any open mic nights, you know, around our area? Is there anything that you can recommend to me? But, you know, the important thing is to just make a start. Don't self-censor yourself straight away, because you need to spend time working out what your style of comedy is. You'll have an idea of what you're already into based on the sort of people that you already watch as stand-ups and the comedy shows that you watch. But it takes a while for you to actually get what's called your comedy voice, which is your onstage presence, your personality, and also your message that comes across. So when I started out, I was just talking about just silly things that I felt was relevant to life in general. It was so general, anybody could have said it. But these days, it's all about how I see the world, how I feel about the world. I bring in things from my own life. I bring in things from friends and family. And then I talk about things from the world, but it's all about from my true perspective. You know, so you can't go on stage trying to make everybody happy, because you'll never make everybody happy.
Yeah.
You just got to fumble your way through until you do find your own voice. But the key ingredient is to write your first jokes, practice them, get on stage and do what you practice. Don't make anything up on the spot, and just run with the blows, because there'll be 1,000 times where you go there and you get no laughs and you'll get bombed, or you even get laughed off stage, not laughing with you, but laughed off stage. And it's happened to me. But you just need to persevere with it. It's like anything. It's just get up on the horse and just do it again and again and again and again. If you're doing it for a hobby, keep doing it. And if you want to make a business out of it, comedy is a serious business. When you decide that you want to be a comedian and you want to go down that path of building up a professional profile, then you need to treat it like a business. You need to go, right, well, what's my message? What's my look? Do I have a stage name? And with that stage name, what's my brand behind that? So, for example, me, I'm JNewtz. My logo and slogan is "Don't be a fucktard," which I think not only sums up my view of the world, but a good view of the world in general, because there are so many idiots these days with all these stupid opinions. Yeah, and "Don't be a fucktard" is my way of basically saying be a good person, but be a sensible person. Yeah, and it's easy to understand. Do you know what I mean? So, taking comedy seriously as a business, like any business, but it's just all about getting started and never, ever, ever making it up on the spot.
You know, it's the little things that matter, and adversity strikes. And like you say, when you bomb on stage, you can say the same thing the next day and people laugh. It's so interesting is that I'm often reminded about, and this is "don't be a fucktard," is that warning signs. If we didn't have warning signs, that would solve a lot of the problems that you get frustrated with. Would you agree?
Absolutely, yeah.
But are you allowed to say that now?
What a boring world.
But are you allowed to say that now? No. It's called duty of care, just in case for those who are listening.
Think about the human race, and this is why comedy is important. It always has been and always will be. You'll never, ever, 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 ever crush comedy. the classic example I can give that anybody will understand is if you walk past a park bench and there's a sign there that says wet paint, human nature, not everybody, but there will be somebody who will come up and go, oh, wet paint. Oh, it's on my hand. Oh, it's on my clothes. Because people are stupid. And there's this wonderful quote that John Cleese said. I'm not too sure if you've ever heard of it. It's a beautiful, beautiful quote. He says, understanding that you're stupid requires a degree of intelligence, because if you're very stupid, how are you going to understand that you're very stupid unless you really understand? You need a degree of intelligence to understand how stupid you really are. And that, to me, sums up humanity in such a wonderful way where, you know, if we're told don't do this, we do it. We're told stay inside, and you go, fuck you. And then you're told go out and live your life, and we go, well, fuck you. Whenever we're told, either verbally or oral or subliminally, we always tend to do the opposite. And that's where a lot of comedy comes from. It comes from humans, you know, default of being fucktards.
We don't like being told what to do. We like to make our own choices. But we've all been saved by a warning sign. Like, all of us have needed a warning sign at some point, which is the point, is that we're like, well, maybe I'm a little bit smarter than the average person, but I still need a warning sign, which is why you talk about is that if every time you fail, you quit, you don't learn and you're better, right? So they talk about iron sharpens iron. So 2022 for you it's a huge year for you, because you've got a tour that's starting, don't you? And it's called Censored, yeah? Tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, Censored for us, the 22 tour, we're starting off at the Melbourne Comedy Festival. And Censored, the show is basically, we do half stand-up and half sketch comedy, because we've got that sort of multimedia extravaganza in our show.
Awesome.
But Censored for us really sort of sums up the past 12 to 18 months where, you know, doctors can't tell the truth and otherwise they lose their jobs, and the media doesn't report what's really happening, and people who put up posts on Instagram or TikTok, they're removed, and people put into Facebook jail for using a word that somebody might be offended by. So Censored for us, it's a great way of just showing the world that, you know what, you can say things that you're supposedly not allowed to say, and guess what? Nothing will happen. Just laugh about it, you know. And we'll be doing 7 shows at the Comedy Festival, and we plan, lockdowns permitting, I suppose, to do some regional stuff as well.
Yeah, and lockdown permitted, is it? My notes here is that, so how are people going to see you in COVID times? And what are the dates you said? You said you were sort of, the comedy festivals around March, April, so you've got a bit of a lead into this as well.
Yeah, so the Comedy Festival usually starts in the last week of March and ends on the second last week of April. So we're doing the first, second and fourth weekend in April, Friday, Saturday, and then we're also doing a show on the Thursday before Easter. Because Easter for us, if you're sort of unknown or semi-known comedians, Easter is always a quiet period unless you're like a major star. People won't come out and see you. So we're basically just doing weekends through April through the Comedy Festival.
And that culture and that community, for people that aren't in that community, what's it like to be involved in it? Because I imagine you've got a bunch of people who are funny, but I would imagine the real life human comes out as well. So is it just ass to grass, laughing in tears, or is it a bit more than meets the eye? What's the community like?
Well, no, it is more than meets the eye. I mean, when you say community, you mean as in the community of comedians or our audience community?
Yeah, well, look, I think both it's relevant because you're performers, right? So as comedians, because you're telling jokes, people just assume you're just funny and everyone's happy all the time. But I imagine there's a lot more depth to that.
Oh, absolutely. Well, look, comedy and tragedy are exactly the same thing.
Tortured souls is what I read.
Yeah, well, that's another way of saying it. Yeah, you know, manic depressive people with a smile on their face. You know, it's like Ronald McDonald to a T. You know, he looks so happy, but would you be happy with hair that red? I wouldn't be.
I'm worried about his feet. That's my biggest issue.
You know, that's big feet, expensive shoes.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. No, look, with the community of comedians, look, I can't speak for everybody, but with me and the 2 guys I do comedy with, Milton White and Mick Moore, we learned a long time ago that when it comes to life, the best thing you can ever learn in your life is to laugh at life and laugh at yourself, because otherwise you're taking too many things too seriously. And that that's probably some of the best advice that anybody should live their life by in any situation, in any profession. Just laugh through life. So, for example, you're in a traffic jam, don't get mad, laugh about it. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think that the way that sort of affects us as performers, it just helps us to just be more silly. We've got this rule on when it comes to writing material, like, is it silly enough? Like anybody can write a joke, but to make it a good joke, is it silly enough? And it could be something along the lines of, well, the reason why is the joke is good, but how can I perform it where it's silly? And with the audience, I suppose it's the same sort of thing. Like, we're still building our following, I guess, because there's some people who come to see us on a whim and they're like, ooh, that's a bit too edgy for me. And then there's other people who are like, I can't get enough of this shit. We did this spoof about the whole Black Lives Matter movement this year, where we're gathering on stage talking about how we should be more woke and everything. And then Milton gets up. Milton's, from Kenya, and he opens up his jumper and he's got a T-shirt that says "White Lives Matter." So you got this 6-foot-tall black man saying "White Lives Matter," and we're just like, whoa, and it's great because the community of people that we seem to attract are the people who want to laugh at the things that they're told, you can't laugh at that, you can't say that. There's a lot of people who still seem to have that value of, well, why can't we laugh at this? And I think that when they're given the opportunity to be in an audience with comedians who subliminally say, you can laugh at this stuff, it's okay. Yeah. There's this sense of togetherness, and it's incredible. It really is.
It reminds me about a few things, is that, when we're in a community that's ours and we can authentically be ourselves, what room do you want to be in? Because whether it's people that can laugh at problems and deal with it, whether they're comedians, doctors, lawyers, real estate agents, whatever, is that they get to a resolution quicker, right? Because they get through the reaction and then they get proactive about the action. So comedy is a lesson in life, isn't it, as well, is that learn to laugh at yourself, understand it's just a fucking joke, and that if you take things too seriously and you're worried about offending the people that aren't offended, just in case they get offended, live your life on your terms.
Yeah, and actually, comedy is also really, really good most times at diffusing conflict. Now, as well as I do, most men, if they're in a sort of confrontational environment, they want to sort of be like the macho guy and be like, yeah, fuck you, and they want to punch on or have this massive swearing match. And there's usually an escalation of testosterone and potential violence that goes along with it. Yeah. But diffusing a situation with comedy, if you can do it, is brilliant. And that happened to me once. I was at a pub, and if anyone has ever seen pictures of me or seen me on stage, you'll know that I wear tartan trousers.
And I did have a question about your look. But we'll get to that.
Okay, we can get back to that. I walk up to the bar, and there's this guy there. He's like built like an absolute brick shit house. He towered above me, bald head, but this massive, massive beard. Broad shoulders and everything. He looked like one of those stocky bastards that would just, like flick you when you lose your head. And he looks at me and he goes, "Oh, mate, why are you wearing a tablecloth?" And I looked up at him, and my first reaction was to shit myself. And I thought to myself, hang on a minute, I've got this. And as I said, I looked at him, bald head, big beard. I said to him, look, I'll tell you why if you can answer me one question first. He's like, yeah, what, mate, what? And I said, why does it look like you've been making out with a lion? And he just stopped and stared at me. And all of a sudden, this little grin came over his face and went, yeah, good one. And he walked off. And I was like,
oh, thank God.
There was that sigh of relief, but it really taught me in that situation that, it was a great little way of just making, it wasn't even a funny joke. It was just that small little nonsensical joke referencing that he's got a massive beard and a bald head, and if you can make fun of me, I can make fun of you, and it's in a joking way, and it diffused the whole situation. And I mean, I thoroughly do believe that, comedy is a way that we can avoid conflict rather than escalating it with violence.
It's an Australianism, isn't it? Is that your mates hang so much shit on each other, is that you learn that it doesn't matter what the actual thing that you're throwing mud at each other. It's the fact that it's said in jest and the humour behind it as well.
Well, it's how you make friends, isn't it?
It's ingrained at you at a young age. Yeah.
Yeah, and we get it from the English. I was in the UK, 2013, and as I said, my dad's from the UK, and I was in Yorkshire spending the day there, and I was having a look around this place, and one of these guys, he says to me, So listen, lad, how does it feel to be on the proper side of the world? And I said to him, go easy. My head's just, getting used to being the right way up.
Yeah.
And it's not funny, but if you can make fun of yourself and enjoy a joke, and I'm still friends with those people, 8 years later, I'm still friends with them. We talk all the time. And comedy is a great way of connecting. In fact, men should use comedy more as a pickup line, not stupid, sleazy, cliche ones, of course, but I think men would have more success picking women up if you can make them laugh rather than, oh, hey, what's your name? Can I buy you a drink? It's like, fuck off.
So JNewtz's dating advice, when's that show coming out?
Probably never.
So I've got a theory about why you dress the way you do, your hairstyle and your makeup. Are you ready for it? Because you're the comedian. You want people to make you a soft target so you can prove to them how funny you are.
Whoa.
Oh, come on.
No, it's actually, look, there's a few reasons why I do it. For whatever reason, I decided to buy myself a pair of tartan trousers years ago. Well, it's because all the other pairs were just sort of like a washed out green or a sort of greeny bluey color, and I just didn't like it. And the red just stood out, and it was half black, half red. I'm wearing them right now. And I just thought they looked really cool. And I've always been into punk rock music, so it had a bit of a punk rock vibe to it. And that's the thing. When I created what I've now called JNewtz, I actually made up this vision board of, well, what is JNewtz and where does all the inspiration come from? So the makeup, for example, the smoky eye makeup is basically like a punk rock thing, like Green Day and all that stuff. Where that whole sort of smoky eye looks. That's where that comes from. The blue dye that I put in my hair, I just love blue. So, and it just seems to draw attention to my face because I've got blue eyes. So that was nice. The tartan trousers, when I first put them on, it was weird. It felt like a part of me that I wasn't being true to, that suddenly I just felt that, wow, these trousers feel as if they're a part of my personality.
Yeah.
And so it's all about embracing who you are and not giving a fuck about what people say or think about you. And I remember I walked into a bar once with my friend, and I was looking around and I thought, wow, there's really sort of three types of men here. There's your guys in your suits, there's your guys in your casual dress, and then there's your guys who look like they're just bogan bums. Do you know what I mean? And then you look around the room and all the women, not one woman in a bar is wearing the same thing. They've got different hairstyles, hair lengths, different makeup. Like their clothing and their makeup express who they are and how they feel, how they want to feel and be on that particular evening or day. And men don't do that. Men are just like, well, this is just my lucky shirt and my jeans and that's it. Like we're very boring. And
well, women are beauty objects and men are success objects. So I think there's a bit to that. True. You're right. Yep.
That is very true. But at the same time, women also respond to different things, because women will always be like, wow, I like what she's wearing and so forth. And I can't tell you how many times I've been stopped when I'm walking down the street or I'm in a bar myself where women say to me, I love your trousers.
Yeah.
They are literally, they're the best pickup line ever, because you can walk in, don't say a fucking word, and a woman will approach you and go, I love your trousers. It's great. And to me, it's just a way of expressing myself. So,
it's peacocking. So you're peacocking.
Shut the fuck up. Yeah.
I'm familiar with that. Yes.
Yeah. The other reason why I wear the makeup and everything else like that, it's because when you decide to be a comedian and build yourself into, a brand and you want to make this a profession in your life, you say to yourself, okay, well, how am I going to be remembered? And one part, of course, is your name. But when I was doing open mic nights with 15 other comedians, I thought, well, how are people going to remember me out of 15 people? And I started saying to my friends, you know what? You might not think I'm the funniest comedian there. You might not remember my jokes, but you'll never forget the person in tartan trousers.
Yes. Yeah.
So for me, it's all about branding for me.
Business strategy and branding, very, very, very important. And look, it's one of those things is that, as a director, people sort of, do they remember the work that the person did, or do they remember how they felt in the moment as well? And I would imagine, so imagine for you, is that a lot of the work you do now, because as we mature as adults, right, that stuff becomes important. So who you were at the start and who you are now to who you're going to become, the evolution and the growth is there. And it must be exciting for you to have the tour and to be doing these things and probably speaking your truth as well in the comedy, your way, on your terms, because there's nothing worse, I imagine, as an individual like yourself who's trying to express, having to conform to others. I imagine that would be one of the biggest fears that you would have moving forward in this industry.
Yeah, look, I suppose it is. I mean, the good thing about being a comedian is you really are in charge of whatever you want to do. You know, you're your own boss. You're the producer, the writer, the director, the performer. You're everything.
Awesome.
You know, like I said before, you shouldn't have to self-censor yourself. And the thing about being a comedian and speaking the truth, coming from, you know, your comedy voice, your perspective on life, is it has a knock-on effect where it strengthens you as an individual away from comedy. It changes you as a person. So who I am now compared to who I was 5 years ago, completely different person. I mean, learning how to laugh at myself and laugh through life and not take things too seriously and having that playful look out on everything, that has changed so much. And comedy's been such a wonderful way to really just get through parts of my life. And even in the sad times, I mean, like, you know, that a few months ago, I lost my uncle to cancer.
Yeah, horrible.
You know, horrible to watch him go through that. But, you know, it was good to spend time with him and joke about things. We both play guitar. We both are into photography, so we just kept talking about that. But we just talk about things that made us laugh and smile. You know, and, you know, 5 years ago, would I've had that strength in my character to do that? I don't think I would have. You know what I mean? So embracing comedy. Yeah, so embracing comedy, whether you're doing it as a performer or just in your life, just to have a happy life, you realize after a short period of time, it's had an incredible positive effect on your life. It really does.
Yeah, and outside of the comedy and just in life now, is that who are the mentors that you look up to that, you know, I suppose help make a difference to move the needle for you? Is there anyone in particular you're following, or a book you're reading, or some sort of literature that you're just like, wow, I wish I read this earlier?
Look, the biggest mentors for me, admittedly, they're all performers. Like Ricky Gervais, I think is a huge mentor to me. The fact that, you know, he's just got this. He's the actor, the comedian, the writer, the producer, the director. I love how he is taking control of his own career. I mean, he's hosted the Golden Globes 5 times. He doesn't need Hollywood, but they wanted him to be there, and he ratted all over them. And like that power that he personified was just brilliant. So I really look up to him in a massive way. Jimmy Carr in the same sort of way. He's fantastic. I love what he does. And then there's a director, Robert Rodriguez, and he did a movie called El Mariachi, which then got remade again into Desperado, which is like the American version. Yep. And then he's gone to do Dusk Till Dawn and many movies since. But he was a filmmaker. He put himself through scientific research to fund a film that he wrote, directed, and filmed himself. He made a book called Rebel Without a Crew. And then he made a small little story called The 10-Minute Film School, where he basically told people, this is how you make your first movie on basically no money. You go off and do that, because once you learn how you can do that, you're then unstoppable. You know, everything else, like, you don't need money to solve your problems because you know how to do it creatively. And he's been that story of his has been a very big inspiration to me as well. So it's all been people within the industry. And I suppose Spike Milligan and the Boys from the Goon Show as well, that whole grown men being silly.
Where it all began.
Where it all began. I mean, I still jump onto Spotify and listen to the Goon Show. I love it.
That's awesome.
It's just amazing. And there's this wonderful episode, and I hope that no one in Power watches what we're doing now and hears this, because they'll remember it because they're arseholes. There's this wonderful episode called Lurgy Strikes Britain. And the crux of the whole thing is it's a made-up disease called lurgy that these two people who manufacture musical instruments planted into the seed of some idiot who then told the House of Parliament to spread all around the country about this pandemic that could only be, your health was compromised unless you learned how to play a brass instrument. And government spent millions of pounds, you know, and you listen to that thing and you go, wow, that's so close to the vote of 2020. It is. So jump onto Spotify and listen to Lurgy Strikes Britain by The Goon Show. Like, the similarities are incredible. But, that's, you know, so yeah, listening to that, it's my mentors and all that stuff. It's all within my industry. It's not it's not the life coaches or I've written this book about philosophy. I've tried all that and I'm not smart enough for it. But if I follow the people who do what I love, that feels good to me. That feels like it's the right path for me.
And what does momentum look like for you in the next 90 days? Because we're at this venture at the time of year where all of a sudden we get to this new year on a calendar and we're more than what we are. But let's be a bit more relevant. What does momentum look like for you in the next 90 days?
Well, look, I mean, this year I really ramped up YouTube in a big way, especially over the last 6 months. So I'll be kicking off 2022 with more YouTube again.
Awesome.
I've had some great suggestions come in for some different things with the channel. So I'm looking forward to pushing that. I'll also be launching a podcast sometime through the year. I've been thinking about it for a little while now. So I've got that in my arsenal too. But also, more importantly, my biggest goal as a comedian is to do the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, which might not happen this year because of all of what's going on. But I'm definitely looking forward to the 2023 Edinburgh Fringe Festival. So the next 90 days, which still encompass, the writing and rehearsal and the finishing of our comedy show material for this year. Wonderful. It's all going to push towards building my audience, finding my audience, and working towards an international market. That's my biggest reach.
Awesome. And where can everyone find you? Obviously, you've got a few channels that people can follow you on.
Yeah, well, YouTube is just JNewtz Comedy or JNewtz Comedian. That's JN. How do I spell my name? JNEWTZ. JNewtz. Gotcha. I forgot for a second.
Awesome.
And if you go to the YouTube channel, you can find my links to TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and my website, which is jnewtzcomedy.com.
Yeah, I love that. And I was looking at some of it before and sent it to someone, and people are so curious about others, right? And that's the beauty of this day and age, is that at the click of your fingertips, everything can be found. It's a wonderful thing.
It is, and the thing that I found really incredible this year, especially, like I've done a few parody songs to well-known popular songs. Like I said, one of them was to that song "Uprising" by Muse, and it's called Victorians. And the amount of people I had writing to me on TikTok or my email or Instagram saying things like, that's such a powerful, uplifting song. Thank you so much. One person even said, I've been really scared and fearful, but that song that you've written has just given me some strength. Thank you so much. And I never expected anything that I do, whether I rant about something or I do with this song, I never expected anything to touch people in that particular way. Because I always look at how can I entertain people, or how can I express my opinion to people who might be thinking the same thing but can't voice it. When you hear that it's affected someone's life in a positive way, it's just incredible, and you never expect it, and it's an incredible feeling when it happens.
Yeah, one person at a time. It's really as simple as that. So it's an awesome thing. We will leave your comedy show, your clips at the bottom, obviously how we can find you as well. But JNewtz, thank you so much for coming on, sharing with us a little bit behind the back scenes of comedy. And I would love to see some background videos of some writing, and then obviously some of the jokes that don't quite go to plan. I think the blooper reel is what I'm more interested in, but I'm a bit dark and a little bit sadistic in that way. So I can't wait to see those. But guys, it's Damien Piotr here from Apex Unleashed. Thank you, JNewtz, for coming on, and we'll catch you on the next episode. See you guys.
Thanks for having me, man. Cheers.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for coming to today's episode. I always talk to people about my little journal, and this is the one I've got. It's not my first one, but it really is about your thoughts and actions become really important when you write them down. So don't forget to do those daily habits. They make all the difference. Please like and subscribe to all our channels. We are here to create and share content with you that helps you move forward in your journey as well, and we'd love to hear about your success stories.